to another episode of Agile Sustainability podcast. And our today's guest is Marjolein Pilon, who was one of our keynote speakers in Noah's Lacasse event with the topic Leading for Life, Agility for Planetary Well-being. And this certainly is a topic that you want to explore more. So, Marjolein, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. And could you please give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor. As you may see, I'm walking here in the forest area of Ede, which is in the center of the Netherlands. I live close by here. I think it's 6 months ago that I did a keynote at Agile Spain in Madrid. And I was talking about leading for life and about our planetary stakeholder. So I am a release train engineer at Alliander, which is a company in the Netherlands. And for a long time, I've been a Scrum Master. And as a Scrum Master, I started conversations with my teams about how can we become more climate aware? How can we reduce our carbon footprint? And we did a lot of learnings. And that is basically what I was talking about at Agile Spain. And also, I developed some workshops about that topic. So, that's very short about me. I'm a mom of 2 children. My children are, my daughter is 7. My son is 8 years old, married. And we live in a small village here in the Netherlands.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. And I need to say that it's really refreshing to talk with someone who is making sure the planet has a seat in the table. So again, thank you so much. And I will start with the first question for you. What was the defining aha moment that led you to formally recognize and articulate the planet as a stakeholder?
Yeah, the aha moment. I think there were several moments. So it was one day about 3 or 4 years ago that I was talking to one of my teams, and we had a conversation at a coffee machine. And as a mom, I was really worried about the climate and about the future for my children. And we were having a conversation about it, and then I think the question came out of nowhere, but I asked my team, "Do you have any idea about the carbon footprint of our own application landscape? Do we have a footprint in IT?" I never thought about that before, and they were really intrigued by that question. And then, so we decided to do a session about it. And so in preparation, I digged into the topic. And I thought, how crazy, why didn't I never think before about the connection between Agile and sustainability and carbon footprint? So I thought there must be a lot that you can find online. And when I went online and I typed in Agile and sustainability, there was not much. There was hardly anything that I could find. So, but there was something, and it was, you probably know Jutta Eckstein. She developed, together with a few other people, she developed the Sustainable Agile Survey, Agile Sustainability Survey. And one of the criteria in that survey was to identify or to treat the planet as one of the stakeholders. And then I was like, wow, that is amazing. That is what we need to do. So I think that was one of my big aha moments. That I was like, it's such an amazing idea, right? And the next day we were having drinks at work and after work, and I think almost the entire department was there, and I was so excited by this idea that everybody that I talked to, I was like, you know what we need to do? We need to introduce the planet as one of our stakeholders. And then people were like, yeah, oh, that's a great idea. Because it was so different. It was so out of the ordinary, and I think that was probably the confidence that I gained there, because I felt that so many people were supporting this idea. That was what I needed to get the courage to get started with these first sessions, retrospective, and then with the workshops, and then after that also trainings that I gave. So that was the actual beginning.
Oh, great. And how do you start introduce? Because we were in a group of people, right? That you realize, okay, why not be at the planet as a stakeholder? But how do you start introducing the teams in the company? What was the big challenge on that?
Yeah. So I think for me, I had IT teams, DevOps teams. So what we started with was just finding out what the connection was between IT and the carbon footprint, and we decided to see how what our own carbon footprint was. So with the first team that I worked with, they wanted to see what their carbon footprint was and how their different applications compare to each other in terms of energy usage. And then when they had that, they could do some interventions and see whether their service were right scaled, whether they were using or still running legacy components that they were no longer using, stuff like that. So that was the low-hanging fruit. And then one of the teams after that, there was one team that really, really got working with this, and they reduced their footprint with 45% in like 9 months, not even that long of a time. So that was really amazing. And for me, that was so inspiring that I thought, okay, so now let me talk on conferences about this, which is how I ended up at Agile Sustainability. Yeah,
it's amazing and nice that the way that they started the engagement was seeing the impact, right?
Yeah,
because it's important not be just a theory, let's say, but see the thing really happening, right? Changing some behaviors, and really, really, really nice. And as you mentioned, you are more focused on technology. So I have a question: where do you see the most significant leverage in green IT? Making computing more efficient, as you mentioned, this example that you gave us, or in IT for green, using technology to solve environment problems?
So probably before AI, I would have said in IT for green. But now we have AI, I'm not sure anymore. AI is consuming so extremely much energy that we should really find solutions for that. Now, personally, I am a process person. So I was a Scrum Master, I'm an RTE now. And I have always felt that it is really important that when we facilitate teams in making sustainable choices, when we ask our teams, how can we integrate the planet as one of our stakeholders, is that we do not give the solutions to the developers or to the architects, but that we ask the right questions so that they can come up with solutions on how to reduce their energy usage. Because they are the experts. They know their applications. They know their IT landscape the best. So I think for us as agilists, or at least as process people, I think it's really important to know our place and to help them with facilitating and with asking these questions and with helping to build a culture of sustainability and building a culture of where there is space, space for the planet as a central part in decision making.
Nice. And pick up on that. You mentioned that they feel engaged and part. Do you have an example of client or organization that successfully has integrated it and saw unexpected benefits, not just for the planet, but like team morale or cost saving, other benefits?
Yeah, so there are a lot of of benefits when you choose to become more sustainable. So you can think in terms of performance, increase in performance, reduction of cost. So when you reduce your energy usage, it is like a proxy for cost reduction. So there are multiple benefits. And on the other hand, I also need to be really honest with you that in the company that I work for at this moment, and I hear it from other people who are also trying these efforts in their companies that they work for, it is, when teams do these workshops, when they get aware of how they can become more climate aware, they get really excited, they get really enthusiastic, and they get going, but how to get it really integrated in the way of working and in the veins, of a company, that is a different question. And that is something that I am struggling with myself at this moment. We have a lot of people in our company. We're about 12,000 people, I think, in our entire company.
Wow.
And about 1,000 to 1,500 in IT. And there are about 100 people in our green IT community now. So passive members. But the real integration of this way of thinking takes time. It takes time and it takes energy. And it takes something we need from the management, that they give direction. So they really support us, but we also need to have it integrated into the vision, into the strategy. And that takes, that it's a longer stretch.
I would say that probably is pretty similar when we start with agile transformation, for example, in a traditional company or any kind of transformation, let's say. That's how to have all levels, it starts
true.
Because at least it's a behavioral change.
Yeah, it is a behavioral change, and but it's so difficult, even because for myself as an RTE, I teach people how to integrate this into their way of working. But even myself as an RTE, I struggle with it because there are other priorities. There's always other priorities, and you don't want to ask too much of your people because they are already stressed out and they are already extremely busy. So, and that is really interesting. So before we started our recording, I told you about the training that I have been now about systemic interventions, right?
That maybe is going to be another podcast, but if you want to give us a little bit of...
So what I am thinking about now is, how do you give in a systemic way? How do you, when you have a stakeholder that has no voice, but it needs its place, how do you give that stakeholder a seat on the table and integrate that into the way of thinking of a company, into the culture, and make it a solid place? So that is something that I'm thinking about at this moment.
Nice. Always is about end-to-end, right? All the system that we have in the company. I think that's the big challenge. I totally agree. I really, as I mentioned before to you, I'm really curious about this workshop and ideas that we're sharing about this system. So maybe another podcast.
That's fine. That's fine. Yes. It's an interesting topic. Mm-hmm.
Totally. I'm really curious about. Thank you for sharing. And for an agile coach or product owner that are listening today, what is the one question they should start asking their team or stakeholders this week or maybe today to begin the journey towards considering the planetary stakeholder?
Yeah. So the one question that I would ask is, what would we do differently if we consider the planet as one of our stakeholders? What is the one thing that we would do differently? Another question that you can ask that is maybe a little more practical is how can we reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030?
Wow.
And then the follow-up is, and what is the first step? The first step that we can take.
Nice. The outcome that we expected, and what is the first step? It's amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
It's
Time
my pleasure.
flies. I hope that everybody has enjoyed as I have. So, Marjolein, thank you so much. If you want to share any final thought or message, please feel free.
Thank you, Carla. It's amazing to have this conversation with you. And I would like to invite everybody to help us tilt our conversations towards planetary awareness.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you.
See you. Bye-bye.